The human had been awake for only a few minutes when they noticed something unusual in the apartment. At first, it was just a soft humming sound, like someone had set a miniature engine to vibrate somewhere in the living room, but it quickly became clear that it wasn't coming from anything mechanical. The alien roommate, with their translucent, slightly gelatinous skin and 4 limbs that seemed entirely unnecessary for the purpose of daily life, was crouched in the corner, staring intently at a glowing tablet floating midair, their tendrils tapping the screen with exaggerated precision. The human blinked, rubbed their eyes, and muttered under their breath, "I'm going to regret whatever I'm about to see." The tablet displayed an application with a title that made the human's stomach drop: Human Breeding 101, for beginners across the galaxy. It had bright, flashing icons, holographic heart symbols, and a very cheerful alien voice narrating the instructions, explaining human intimacy in the most literal way possible. The human realized, with a mix of horror and fascination, that the alien wasn't just curious. They were preparing to attempt it. And from the looks of it, they were taking the instructions extremely seriously. The alien had already made a list of materials: cereal boxes stacked into pyramids, glow-in-the-dark ink, a small speaker emitting what looked like the entire works of Shakespeare in a loop, and a pair of robotic wings that flapped erratically every time the alien moved. The human's first instinct was to stop them, but the alien's eyes flickered with that peculiar mix of innocence and deadly seriousness that suggested arguing might be futile. They were a creature of logic, and the logic in their mind said this was exactly what humans did to express attraction. You're planning to do that?" the human asked, trying to sound casual, though their voice betrayed the panic rising in their chest. The alien turned, tilting their head in that way that suggested pure confusion, as if the question itself was a cultural anomaly. "Do what?" they asked, their voice pitched higher than usual, which made every word sound like a small vibration across the floor. "Human breeding. The experiment. Whatever this app says," the human said, gesturing helplessly toward the glowing tablet. The alien's eyes widened, widened as much as alien eyes could widen, and then they nodded slowly, as if finally understanding the situation. Yes. Step 1, communicate affection. Step 2, display offerings. Step 3. They paused dramatically, as if savoring the gravity of the moment. Perform foreplay. The human's heart sank. They hadn't yet realized that in alien logic, perform foreplay involved literally everything the app said, reciting every romantic passage in the entire Shakespearean canon while painting glowing symbols on the floor and stacking cereal boxes into a monument to human courtship. And the alien had already begun the first 2 steps with the utmost dedication. Trying to remain calm, the human decided the only reasonable option was to observe for now. They reached for their phone and activated the camera, hoping to capture evidence of the impending disaster. "This is going to be a viral masterpiece, or a disaster of galactic proportions," the human whispered to themselves, ducking behind the couch. The alien, oblivious to the human's recording efforts, continued to hum and move with mechanical precision. Every tap on the tablet made their limbs jitter in perfect rhythm, and every step closer to the cereal pyramid made it wobble dangerously. The aliens' methods of communication were another source of pure chaos. Instead of simple conversation, they tried to mimic human gestures they thought were romantic. They bowed while hovering, flailed their tendrils like they were conducting an invisible orchestra, and occasionally attempted to kiss the air as if that were part of the ritual. The human, meanwhile, was hiding a mixture of terror and fascination as they muttered, "I don't know whether to stop this or call for help from literally anyone with common sense." Objects in the apartment began to take the brunt of the alien's well-meaning but catastrophic enthusiasm. The glow-in-the-dark ink had already splattered across the carpet, leaving luminous streaks in the shape of vague, terrible hearts. One of the cereal box pyramids collapsed halfway through its construction, sending dry flakes raining down like a tiny, tragic storm. And the robotic wings, when activated, whirred and flapped so violently that a small lamp toppled, narrowly missing the alien's leg, though to their credit, they continued without hesitation. The human tried reasoning again. "Look, maybe we should slow down, okay? This is a lot to process." They gestured at the tablet, and then at the ruined cereal boxes, which had now formed an abstract heap of questionable romantic symbolism. The alien paused for a moment, tilting their head, then concluded with absolute certainty. Yes. You are agreeing that these actions are correct? Affirmative. I shall continue. Every time the alien misunderstood, the human felt their panic rise exponentially, and yet, there was an undeniable charm in their roommate's earnestness. They were utterly devoted to doing things correctly, no matter how absurd the instructions seemed. There was a strange rhythm to the chaos: spilled milk, glowing ink, wobbly cereal towers, flapping wings, and the constant murmur of alien commentary. Somehow, it was both horrifying and oddly endearing. By mid-morning, the apartment looked like a battlefield, the evidence of a romantic ritual gone catastrophically wrong scattered across the floor. Yet the alien had not slowed their pace. In fact, their excitement seemed to grow with every small disaster. The human ducked behind the couch again, filming the latest scene, the alien attempting to kiss the air while reciting Hamlet and holding a flailing robotic wing, the cereal flakes now drifting lazily to the floor. Somewhere deep in the mess, the human realized two things. 1. The alien was taking the concept of human romance more seriously than any human they had ever met. 2. They had absolutely no idea how this story would end. They just hoped it would not involve a fire department or intergalactic authorities being called to investigate unauthorized breeding experiments on Earth. And as the alien glanced at the tablet again, tapping the screen with frantic devotion, the human whispered to themselves, "This is going to be a very, very long day, and I might actually be falling for them despite everything." The alien spent the rest of the morning meticulously assembling what could only be described as a human seduction arena. The cereal box pyramids had now become a labyrinth of edible architecture, complete with glowing ink runes tracing their perimeters like some kind of interstellar treasure map. The robotic wings, which had previously caused minor furniture casualties, were now strapped to the alien's back with an assortment of wires and elastic bands, whirring gently as they hummed an oddly melodic tone. The alien's focus was absolute, each movement deliberate and precise, as though a single misstep could irreparably ruin the human breeding process. The human had moved to a strategic observation point behind the kitchen counter, phone at the ready, narrating softly as if they were a faceless host on a very bizarre documentary. And here we have the alien in their natural habitat, performing what can only be described as a courtship ritual completely divorced from all human logic. Notice the care with which they stack the boxes, the precision in their glow-in-the-dark ink strokes, and the subtle hum of excitement from the wings. They sighed, realizing they were beginning to sound like a nature show host narrating the mating dance of a particularly aggressive bird species. The alien paused mid-tap on the tablet, their eyes flicking toward the human as if expecting approval. "Do you see, human? I am performing step 4, playful gestures. This is essential for bonding." Before the human could respond, the alien began twirling in place, the robotic wings flapping erratically and knocking over one of the smaller cereal towers. Milk and flakes scattered across the floor like snow in a microscopic blizzard. Yes, looks great," the human said, ducking instinctively as the alien nearly toppled onto the counter. Next came what the alien referred to as the vocalization phase, which involved reciting Shakespeare in its entirety while alternating between a falsetto and a deep, resonant drone that made the apartment vibrate. Every so often, they paused dramatically to blow glowing ink from a small vial, creating trails of luminous poetry in the air. The human groaned, wishing that somehow the alien's enthusiasm could be redirected toward literally anything else. But despite the absurdity, there was a certain rhythm to it, a bizarre, chaotic choreography that made the alien's commitment almost admirable. The human attempted subtle sabotage, thinking that maybe a small intervention could prevent disaster. They quietly removed one of the ink vials, thinking that without it, the alien might realize how ridiculous things were getting. The alien noticed immediately. "Ah, you are attempting to improve efficiency. Fascinating. I shall recalibrate." And with that, they retrieved the nearest cereal box, declared it a focus amplifier, and hurled it gently across the room, narrowly missing the human's head. The human ducked again, muttering under their breath about how, gentle, alien logic apparently meant projectile cereal. As the morning dragged on, the alien moved to what they called the offering stage. This involved presenting items they believed humans desired: half-melted chocolate bars, a tangled ball of string, and one of the human socks, which the alien held with pride like a ceremonial banner. The human groaned audibly, realizing that explaining why the sock was off-limits might require more diplomacy than the average UN peace negotiation. But the alien seemed blissfully unaware of human social norms, their expression one of pure, innocent determination. Then came the moment the alien had clearly been anticipating: the initiation of foreplay. According to the app, this step involved a combination of tactile, visual, and auditory stimuli, all executed simultaneously. The alien began waving their tendrils in intricate patterns, reciting poetry, and flapping the robotic wings in time with a series of strange clicks and hums. The glowing ink traced elaborate patterns on the floor, which the alien insisted were symbolic representations of desire. The human, crouched behind the counter with phone recording, had to suppress laughter, fear, and a creeping sense of admiration all at once. Despite every mishap, there was an undeniable charm in the alien's efforts. Every gesture, every glowing line, every misplaced cereal flake was performed with a sincerity that the human couldn't entirely resist. They found themselves occasionally smiling, even as the alien accidentally flung a chocolate bar across the room, narrowly missing the ceiling fan. There was something endearing in the way the alien tried so hard to understand the concept of affection, even if their interpretation was completely off the mark. As the morning turned to afternoon, the alien declared with a flourish: Step 6. Initiation of contact. This involved an overly elaborate bow followed by a series of increasingly complicated gestures meant to simulate human intimacy. The human groaned, realizing that the contact in question likely involved being the unwilling participant in a combination of glowing ink, cereal debris, and robotic wing flapping. Still, there was no turning back now. The alien's commitment was absolute, and the human's only hope was to survive the spectacle intact. By the time the alien paused to adjust their wings, the apartment looked like a cross between an art installation, a disaster zone, and a haunted carnival. The human, crouched behind the couch with phone in hand, whispered to themselves, "If anyone asks how I spent my afternoon, I'm saying I was documenting an alien cultural ritual. That is the only explanation that makes sense." And as the alien tilted their head, looking expectantly at the human with that same innocent, determined expression, the human realized with a mixture of dread and amusement that the day was only going to get stranger from here. By mid-afternoon, the apartment had officially transformed into what the human could only describe as a romantic war zone. Cereal flakes crunched underfoot, streaks of glowing ink painted the walls and floor like alien hieroglyphics, and the robotic wings continued to hum and flap with relentless enthusiasm. The alien, oblivious to the mess, had moved to what they proudly called the grand escalation phase, which apparently involved every remaining instruction from the Human Breeding 101 app executed simultaneously. The human, crouched behind the sofa, had long since stopped trying to intervene with subtlety. At this point, survival meant ducking, dodging, and occasionally laughing uncontrollably at the absurdity of it all. The alien had dragged out the last of their preparation items: a half-deflated balloon filled with glowing slime, a string of blinking LED lights, and a small music box that played what could only be described as a cross between a lullaby and a warning siren. They set these in strategic positions around the apartment, pacing back and forth with the kind of precision that suggested this was the most important night in intergalactic history. The human could only watch, a mix of awe and terror churning in their stomach, as the alien began what appeared to be a combination of interpretive dance, shadow puppetry, and ceremonial bowing. Every movement the alien made seemed to defy logic but followed some internal, rigid system that only they could comprehend. Tentacles waved in intricate loops, robotic wings flapped at seemingly random intervals, and every so often a splash of glowing ink would hit the ceiling or furniture. The human ducked instinctively each time, whispering sarcastically to themselves about how they would have to explain this in therapy someday. And yet, despite the chaos, there was an undeniable charm in the alien's dedication, Their attempts were clumsy, yes, but utterly sincere. Then came the first true test of intimacy according to the app, direct interaction. The alien approached cautiously, eyes wide and almost comically focused, extending a tendril as if it were a delicate gift rather than a semi-flexible limb that could knock over anything in its path. The human froze, unsure whether to step back, laugh, or accept the gesture. Before they could decide, the alien attempted a form of touch they believed was customary, a slow, deliberate brush of the tendril across the human's shoulder. The human jumped, accidentally knocking a lamp over, which rolled across the floor and triggered the music box to play at full volume. The alien, however, didn't flinch. Instead, they nodded approvingly, mistaking the chaos for enthusiasm, and whispered, "Yes! This is the correct emotional response." The human couldn't help but laugh, despite their panic. The alien's complete misinterpretation of every single social cue was ridiculous, but there was something oddly endearing about the way they approached the task with such solemnity. Each failed gesture, each misfired attempt, seemed to carry a kernel of genuine care. The human found themselves softening, their exasperation mixing with amusement, and something else, something dangerously close to attraction. They ducked again as a robotic wing knocked over the serial pyramid for the third time that day, muttering under their breath, "I swear, I've never seen anyone try this hard to romance anyone in my life." The alien, undeterred by the continuous disasters, moved to what the app called expressive displays of affection. This involved more glowing ink, a small series of floating holographic hearts, and a performance of Shakespeare that escalated from recitation into full-on dramatics, complete with gasps, exaggerated gestures, and occasional somersaults. The human had begun narrating the events to their camera like a faceless commentator. "Notice the elegance," they whispered. "The way the alien combines interpretive dance with, I think, an attempted touch ritual. Truly, a spectacle unlike any human courtship I've ever witnessed." Somewhere between the third spilled ink puddle and the second toppled cereal tower, the alien attempted what they considered the pinnacle of foreplay, a coordinated combination of tendril brushing, glowing ink patterns, and vocalized poetry, all performed while hovering in place using the robotic wings. The human barely managed to catch them when they wobbled precariously, saving both the alien and the half-collapsed furniture from total destruction. For a moment, they just looked at each other, the human panting, the alien glowing faintly with what could only be described as pride. There was a beat of genuine connection amid the chaos, a brief pause where the absurdity of the situation faded into something strangely intimate. Then the alien, interpreting the human's laughter and minor rescue efforts as encouragement, leaned closer, their translucent face inches from the human's shoulder, tentacles lightly brushing the arm in a manner that was both awkward and endearing. The human froze, heart racing, feeling the bizarre mix of terror, warmth, and inexplicable attraction. Despite the disaster around them, the alien's earnestness had created a kind of charm that was impossible to resist. Their gestures were still wildly wrong, but they were infused with a sincerity that no human could ignore. As evening approached, the alien paused to admire the chaos they had wrought, glowing ink trails, toppled cereal towers, and broken lamps all included. "Step 9 complete, bonding achieved," they announced with absolute certainty. The human, still crouched behind the couch, felt a mixture of relief and disbelief. Somehow, through spilled milk, robotic wings, and absurdly literal interpretations of romance, the alien had managed to create a moment of genuine connection. The human's narration to their camera took on a softer tone, a mixture of awe and humor. "And here we have the alien, achieving what no human instructor could teach, total, unflinching commitment to understanding us. Disaster? Absolutely. Charming? Surprisingly so. And somehow, against all odds, there's a spark of something real." By the time the alien finally collapsed, exhausted but glowing with satisfaction, the human quietly approached, helping steady them while avoiding any further ink splatters. Despite the mess, the chaos, and the absurdity of it all, there was a warmth in the air, a fleeting but undeniable moment of intimacy. A reminder that sometimes understanding and connection come from the strangest places. And as the human filmed the final shots, capturing the glowing alien and the ruined apartment in a single frame, they couldn't help but whisper, "I think we might actually survive this, and maybe even enjoy it." As night fell, the apartment had been utterly transformed into a luminous disaster zone. Cereal flakes crunched underfoot like tiny crystals, streaks of glowing ink formed a labyrinthine pattern across the floor, and the remnants of toppled furniture leaned precariously against the walls. The alien, still radiant from their exertions, hovered midair with robotic wings buzzing gently, surveying the chaos as though it were an art gallery. The human, crouched behind a chair with phone in hand, whispered to themselves, "This is either a historic breakthrough in alien-human relations or a fire hazard waiting to happen." The alien cleared their throat, producing a soft chime that sounded vaguely musical, and announced, "Tonight I shall attempt the final stage, full human breeding procedure." Their tentacles moved with careful precision, arranging glowing ink lines into a more intricate pattern than anything the human had seen before. Floating hearts blinked in rhythm with the humming wings, and the air smelled faintly of chocolate, ink, and something that could only be described as interstellar pheromones. The human held their breath, knowing that intervention at this stage could either save them or make things exponentially worse. The alien began by attempting what they called the full sensory connection, which involved simultaneously brushing their tendrils against the human's shoulder, whispering poetry in a musical monotone, and flapping the robotic wings to create a gentle breeze. The human flinched as a small ink splatter landed on their arm, but there was something undeniably tender in the alien's precise and careful movements. It was clumsy, absurd, and entirely alien, but also surprisingly intimate. Then came the offering stage, upgraded to a ceremonial level. The alien presented the human with what they considered symbolic gifts: a partially melted chocolate bar arranged atop a small stack of glowing cereal, a ball of string woven into a heart shape, and one of the human's socks, now marked with luminous symbols. The human took the gifts gingerly, unable to decide whether to laugh, scold, or genuinely appreciate the effort. The alien tilted their head, waiting for a reaction, and the human realized that even a smile or a gentle touch might be interpreted as a massive success in the alien's calculation of bonding metrics. With a deep, deliberate hum, the alien moved to the expressive embrace stage. They attempted to mimic human closeness with a combination of hovering proximity and gentle tendril contact. The human stiffened, then slowly relaxed as they felt the sincerity radiating from the alien. Despite every misinterpretation, every absurd instruction, and every chaotic detail of the apartment around them, there was an unmistakable warmth in the gesture. It was awkward, messy, and completely non-traditional, yet it carried an authenticity that the human couldn't ignore. At one point, a stray robotic wing knocked over a lamp, sending a cascade of blinking LED lights spinning across the floor. The human instinctively caught the alien mid-hover, steadying them just enough to prevent a collision. The alien interpreted this as mutual support, a vital step in the human breeding procedure. "Yes! Connection confirmed!" they exclaimed, their voice vibrating with triumph. The human couldn't help but chuckle at the absurdity. Chaotic as the scene was, the alien's interpretation of intimacy was oddly heartwarming. Next came the final ritual: synchronized movement and vocalization. The alien flapped their wings, traced glowing ink patterns across the floor, and recited poetry while performing a series of intricate gestures. The human followed as best they could, ducking and weaving around the wings and ink, offering occasional laughter and encouragement. Every movement was imperfect, chaotic, and ridiculously complicated, but together they created a strange harmony. The alien's commitment and the human's improvisation meshed in a way that was both funny and unexpectedly tender. By the time the ritual concluded, both the human and the alien were breathless, ink-streaked, and surrounded by the remnants of their disastrous ceremony. The alien hovered in front of the human, eyes glowing faintly, tentacles extended in a gesture that felt like an invitation to closeness. The human hesitated, then stepped forward, letting themselves be drawn into the alien's embrace. It was awkward, messy, and utterly unconventional, but it was real. For the first time, human and alien shared a moment that wasn't dictated by instructions, apps, or intergalactic rules. It was genuine connection born out of chaos, laughter, and sincerity. The human reached for their phone and glanced at the camera feed, realizing they had captured every ridiculous, messy, and heartwarming moment. The alien, seeing the device, tilted their head in curiosity. "Is this part of the human ritual?" they asked. The human laughed, shaking their head. "No, this is just proof that we survived, and somehow bonded." The alien seemed to process this, then nodded solemnly, their expression radiating pride and satisfaction. Finally, the alien let their wings relax, the glowing ink trails dimmed, and the serial debris settled. The apartment was a mess, but it felt alive with the energy of shared experience. The human looked at the alien, covered in a thin layer of ink, chocolate smudges, and faint pheromone residue, and realized something remarkable. In all the absurdity, the failures, and the chaos, they had found something genuinely delightful. Perhaps this was what the app couldn't teach: the messy, unpredictable, and wonderful way that connection could actually happen. As the human filmed the final moments, the alien whispered with absolute conviction, "Human breeding, complete?" The human exhaled, laughing despite everything, and muttered, "Yeah, somehow it is." And in that ridiculous, glowing, chaotic apartment, amid cereal flakes, ink trails, and robotic wings, they shared a quiet, tender moment that was entirely their own, leaving the faceless video camera to silently record the improbable beginning of an interspecies romance.